Sources telling Woj the deal includes a player option for the 2025-2026 season and a no-trade clause. This coming season will be LeBron's age 40 season. Just one player has scored 1,000 points in a season at the age of 40 or older, and have
coming hard at the producers here. I'm going to say fact.
Understands the difference.
I'm going to say fact. I think the Celtics get a couple. I think they're the heavy favorites to win it this year. Then we'll see if they can get another one over the next 5. So I'll go fact on it.
All right, Bobby Marks, if I said the Spurs are now a playoff team with Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama, is that fact or fiction?
That is fiction. I think a goal for San Antonio is to be competitive this year. And what does competitive mean? 30 wins, certainly. Maybe be overachieved, getting closer to the trade deadline here. I think there's still some work to be done, but I do think San Antonio has gotten better with the addition of Chris Paul. And I'm interested to see their first-round pick, Stephon Castle, as far as how he can impact, certainly under the tutelage of Chris Paul.
Alan?
Yeah, I think that's the important part, and I agree with Bobby. We can't put them in the category of a playoff team just yet, although Wemby certainly is showing us that he's going to be a special player to watch in this coming season. Chris Paul, I think it's fact or fiction. Is he going to still be on the roster? He will not be on the roster at the end of this season. That's something to watch, too. He could be a piece that the Spurs could move at the trade deadline and put him on a playoff team that could use him.
They wanted to pair with Victor Wembanyama. They are looking to do what Houston did last year, go from a bad team to 11th in the West to compete for a playing spot.
Interesting. All right, last one for you, Tim. If I said Steph has won his last title with the Golden State Warriors, is that fact or fiction?
Fact, because it's been the case since they won the title in 2022. I think winning that title sort of clouded what people should have really looked at with this team. Is that was a huge accomplishment for this team to find a way through the playoffs, to win that championship against a Celtics team that they might not have been as talented as overall, but their overall guile and championship experience got them over the line. And now they're a good team, but they're nowhere near a championship level.
And of course, this is significant. Handle the Klay Thompson situation the way you would have.
I would have. I know breaking up is hard to do, especially when you have an icon like Klay Thompson here. But I think, as Tim said, certainly their best days were behind them. I think Golden State has a clear runway as far as how this roster gets better. There's certainly the DeAnthony Melton signing. Kyle Anderson. We'll see what happens with a player like possibly Buddy Hield. Those 3 moves would not have been possible if Klay Thompson was brought back.
And by the way, if those 3 guys are on the team, they get Buddy Hield, they have DeAnthony Melton, they have Kyle Anderson, they're a better team than they were last year. They're just a better team than having Klay Thompson and those 3 guys. There's no doubt about that. And they got a chance to be a top 6 team in the West.
So the news on them this week, they lose Klay Thompson. They don't sign Paul George. And that was something that really, grinds Draymond Green's gears a little bit, as he had this to say about it on his podcast.
A little salty about that because, as you all know, Paul George was going to come to the Warriors, and we wanted Paul George to come to the Warriors. And, we always talk about these organizations, what they do for their players and whatnot. These organizations don't always be willing to play ball, and I don't think the Clippers were really willing to play ball for Paul George to get to the Warriors. I kind of understand it, I suppose. You don't want him in the same division as you because you may know how that looks if he comes with us.
First of all,
I mean, you look like you had a reaction.
Because it's like I'm trying to process the whole thing here. Draymond also in this podcast talked about how he was, he shed a few tears with Klay Thompson leaving. Why weren't you salty about Klay Thompson leaving? Why aren't you salty about that? Like, you're openly talking about another player that you wanted to bring in to help your team and all that. You're salty about the fact that you couldn't get Paul George. What was the cost? You lost Klay Thompson. You're sad about that, but mad about the fact that you couldn't get another player to replace him. This is so bizarre. Steph Curry putting out what should have been just a text, right? Like, he puts it on Instagram and all this.
Presumably, he also texted.
Where are those guys when it comes to the Klay Thompson part?
They talked to Klay last week, and I think everybody understood that Klay Thompson wanted to leave, and they're happy for him that he's in a good situation for him. I think everybody understood it was probably the best thing all around.
It just, the whole thing is just strange to me. That's all. Just seeing them talk, especially Draymond, seeing him talk about what another team should have done for you to help you get a player. That's the part to me that I just don't understand. You just lost a guy that you won championships with and all this stuff. Let your podcast just be about that. Does it need to be about some pie in the sky ability to try to get a guy like Paul George, but the other team wouldn't trade? So it's like the Clippers' fault. Bobby, help me make sense of this, because not everybody should have a podcast.
Honest is taking over the show. Dan, just go home. Just go home. You're good.
I would say this, if Paul George really wanted to be a Golden State Warrior, he would have opted into his contract and they would have worked out a trade. He didn't, and now he's a Philadelphia 76ers. And the Clippers had no obligation to Paul George, a player who had been there 5 years. He wasn't there 10 years. He wasn't there 15 years. He didn't win them a championship. There was no obligation taking back salary that they did not want. So, listen, I get it where Draymond is coming from here. Golden State did right by Klay Thompson. They traded him to Dallas, a team he wanted to go to. The Clippers had no obligation to Paul George.
Yeah, different situations, obviously. And look, we're talking, Tim, about the Warriors missing out on players that they wanted to get. We talked earlier about the Lakers missing out on players that they wanted to get. But people should not get confused. These are not similar situations, right, these two teams?
I mean, they're similar but different, right? Because neither team is good enough to win a championship. But the Warriors have a chance to be a top 6 team in the Western Conference. They have a chance to be, if everything breaks right, they could maybe even be the 4 seed in the West and host a playoff series, if it all goes right. The Lakers don't have that kind of ceiling. And we see, because the Warriors have the ability to make these moves, to add these players and still have draft picks and expiring contracts to go get more players, they have a chance to load up in a way that the Lakers can't, even if LeBron James takes a little less money and they stay out of the second apron and can do some moves around the edges. They're just not good enough to be a real contender in the West, where at least the Warriors have a chance to be a legitimate top 6 team.
Bobby, you see that the same way?
I totally agree. I mean, I think the moving off of Klay Thompson, I think just gives them such more flexibility as far as, certainly how you add to their roster. They're basically taking the Klay Thompson, $26 million contract that he could have maybe got from the Warriors, and they've broken it up into 3 players, and it just gives them so much more flexibility when they're going to make that next move. Maybe a guy like Larry Markkinen becomes available. They'll have the tradable players along with the draft picks to go get that 3rd star maybe that they've been looking for.
What is next for the Warriors, Alan?
Well, you want to see if Jonathan Kuminga can build off of what he finished last season, and can he sort of help them get a little bit closer to be competitive, and as Tim said. But you know what I'm watching this summer? I'm watching this summer the Olympics, as we all will be. But I'm watching Steph Curry making his Olympic debut, because if he has a great Olympics, which he certainly can, like we talked about LeBron playing at a high level at this age, Steph Curry's still playing at a high level. If he plays at a high level and he still looks like he's got that, that Curry magic, the chef is still there in his game, especially playing with a lot of other great players, don't you think the conversation will start sometime during the season, especially if the Warriors are kind of middling, not exactly a high-end team? Of the questions now will start to come out with Steph Curry is should you end your career here in Golden State with a team that's middling, or should he try to find himself with another team with a chance to win a championship? Because as basketball fans, because he'll probably want to retire there, but as basketball fans, you want to see the best players playing at the biggest stage. If he still got it like that, and we'll see in Paris, fans will want to see him contending for a championship.
First down took Graz's job. Now he's taking the producer's job.
23.
Let's just all go home. Just have Alan hang out for 20 minutes.
This is what we do. This is New York Sports Talk Radio.
Now he can go talk about Aaron Rodgers, and then we'll be all right.
23 minutes left in the show, and he drops, should Steph Curry finish his career at Golden State? Like that.
Well, we'll know in Paris. We'll know it. We'll see it in Paris. But that conversation's coming if he plays great.
Yesterday, Alan said Joel Embiid shouldn't go to Paris. Now he's saying that Steph Curry is going to be gone from the Warriors if he goes to Paris and plays well. The Olympics is where we're at.